Pro-life talk. Real world answers. This is Life Report.
Welcome to Life Report. I'm your host, Josh Brom. We're here with Gabi and one last show with my brother, Tim Brom from Justice for All. We're excited to have him here. You know, Steve Wagner was talking to me the other day. He said, I'm really looking forward to hearing you guys on the show. But he said, I think it would be more entertaining if you guys got into a fist fight at some point. That would be a lot of fun for people. So I think I could take you. The day is young. We'll see what happens. That hasn't happened yet. But speaking of that, let's talk about being open-minded. Wow. We've had this idea. What a transition. The king. Speaking of this, speaking of fist fighting with my brother. We all do speaking for Justice for All. You're on staff with Justice for All. We do JFA events often, and one of the things that we talk about is the idea of humility and being open-minded. But we've never really talked about that on Life Report, like as for a whole show. But I think it's not necessarily a super simple concept, and I've been having more and more discussions with people about what does this actually mean to be open-minded, how open-minded should we be, and so that's what we're doing today. I started thinking about this last year. There's a show that I watched on the Discovery Channel called Pawn Stars. This is a great reality show about this amazing pawn store in Nevada, where it's like this family-owned operation. There's these guys, and the main owner, this guy Rick, he's like this historical genius. I mean, I know sometimes people bring stuff in, like there's an appointment, he's already Wikipedia the thing already, but sometimes like people just bring stuff in and he can tell them all about whatever, like all these areas of history. It's really, really smart. But this one time he's talking to his dad, the grumpy old man is there watching his son do his thing, and he's telling this guy who's brought in like this old Civil War revolver or something, like this old gun, brings it in there, and he's like, oh yeah, that's from this decade or whatever, and like he's like really confidently, and it turns out he's wrong. He's just totally wrong. And so they do this cutaway to the old man speaking to the camera outside, and he says, "That's my son, full of confidence and often wrong." And I thought, I wonder if that describes people sometimes. I wonder a lot of times we're super confident in our views, but what if, like, a lot of times we're wrong about the views that we're confident about because we're not right about everything. People have conflicting views. Everyone thinks they're right about everything. That obviously can't work. Mm-hmm. And so I started thinking about this more. And then I was having this Facebook exchange with someone. I'm talking with Sally, and this is just a Facebook group where we've been having this lengthy exchange. Like we've been talking back and forth about abortion for months now. And Sally is not an open-minded person, and gratingly so. Like everything for her is about bodily rights. And so anytime anyone says anything, it's like, nah, it's bodily rights trump right to life. So we're wrong. Nah. And everything we say, and so at some point,
it's
towards
incredible
the end,
she can win any argument with like 7 words.
Right, it's amazing. But that's her view, and it's getting frustrating, right? Even for some of the other pro-choice like moderators, like we would talk about this on our little secret moderator group. Like this is like it feels like this is not how to have good dialogue, and there's something everyone can tell there's something off about this. So at some point, I actually said, can I help you understand what it is that I see when you say these things? Because it seems like a lot of times when I'm talking, I'm trying to communicate with these kind of this language of like, it seems to me that X. And it seems like if I'm right, then Y. But, what do you think? Whereas when you say things, it's always a very declarative statement. I'm right, you're wrong because of bodily rights. Boom, done, that's it. I'm ex finito. And so I said, it doesn't feel like you're open-minded, and this is frustrating. And she said, oh no, I'm very open-minded. I will listen to whatever you have to say. I will listen to you. I will patiently, I will read what you have to write.
I'll pay attention to the noise coming out of your mouth.
Right. But you're wrong.
It sounds like she tolerates you.
Right. That's
a little different.
Yeah, there's an equivocation thing happening here, I think. And so I said, that's not what I mean when I say open-minded. What I mean is I'm trying to be like, I'm actually open that maybe you're right. Maybe the bodily rights thing does trump my view. And I'm really looking into bodily rights arguments. In fact, I'm actually working with a team of guys trying to work on this new argument that I think would probably do a better job talking about bodily rights than anything we've had before. He's like, nope, it's going to be wrong because bodily rights trump, whatever. So in the end, what happened was I just stopped talking to her. Like at some point, I couldn't do this. Like it felt like I was wasting my time. And then I thought, I wonder if pro-life people do this or pro-choice people too. I wonder if sometimes we're so close-minded that we come across exactly like Sally did. And I'm now experiencing the effect that must have on the people that we're talking to sometimes.
Yeah, I had an experience a few months ago that caused me to be pretty concerned about this kind of issue also. I was talking to a good pro-life friend of mine, and we started off, we were talking about theology. And we don't need to go into that. But so we start off, we're talking about theology, and we're just disagreeing. And so when we start like going down a layer and like the way that we think, the way that we reason, and finally we got down to like this bedrock layer of, no, I'm sure that Christianity is true and such and such. It's like, well, is that the thing you're most sure of in the world? Yes. Okay, well, what about like that 2 + 2 = 4? Like, could we agree that that's more obviously true than that Christianity is true?
Heretic!
No. That's what she said. She said, no, I don't think so. Like I think it is just as obvious as anything that Christianity just has to be true. And this is a very, very well-meaning person, and we have a lot of agreements on a lot of things. But I think there's a critical mistake here that's happening, and I'm particularly concerned about this kind of mistake because of some more recent experiences that I had at Arizona State University with Justice for All. I had 2 days on campus on the outreaches. And those days, for some reason, God saw fit to send all the relativists to me.
And
He blessed you.
He blessed you with relativists.
Why me, God? I don't know why he did that. If I were God, I would have done something differently, but I'm not. And so God is wiser than me, and he thought that maybe he wanted to sanctify me.
Right.
And so he's testing me. Right. And so I had this conversation after conversation with relatives. I'm talking hardcore.
Yeah.
No, it's really not wrong for people to kill their 10-year-olds.
Right.
That shouldn't be illegal. It's not wrong. I don't know. People disagree. Oh, geez.
Right.
And I had a lot of conversations with the people, and I would ask them about kind of their background. And very oftentimes they would say, yeah, I grew up in the church. I used to be a Christian, this denomination or this denomination. So what happened? Well, I couldn't ask questions. Anytime I tried to ask questions, they would say, no, you just need to have more faith. And this also...
And now they're atheists.
And now they're atheists. And they're not just atheists. They are hardcore relativists. And they're impossible to talk to. And that also brings in another experience that I had in the last year of seeing a youth group, a church youth group situation where a controversial issue came up that I won't go into. But after there's some discussion of this controversial issue, one of the youth leaders stood up and said, here is the church's view on this. And then she gave the explanation. End of discussion. No discussion. That's it. And as I witnessed that, it's like, no, we can't do that, because that kind of thing leads to the students that I experienced a few weeks ago. So I'm glad we're covering this. Open-mindedness is a huge deal, and it's not just a matter of we need to act open-minded. No, we need to actually be open-minded and tolerate open-mindedness in the church with our kids. When I was a teenager, I had all kinds of questions. I doubted my faith. I've doubted my faith all throughout the last 10 years. And some people are thinking, oh my gosh, this is bad. I'm scaring some people. No, but I think that's necessary. And I'm still a Christian, and I'm still pro-life. And it's because I think that's where the truth has led me. That's where the arguments have led me. And I think we've got a good case. And I'm not Christian because I want to be Christian, because that's convenient. I'm Christian because I'm persuaded that those are the best arguments. Right. And that's how we need to act.
So Gabi, you and I started talking about doing a show about open-mindedness recently, and I had you go and do a bunch of reading. I basically said, okay, prepare us an episode on open-mindedness. And so you did a lot of reading and covered a lot of things I think were really helpful. So let's start, let's define what we're talking about here. When we say open-minded, what does that mean? Because I know recently we even posted on our Facebook page that we were going to talk about open-mindedness, and immediately a very intelligent person was confused and actually thought we were going to be talking about something else. So can you help us kind of with a working definition of why some people are sometimes confused about this term?
Yeah, I think just talking a little bit about what it is, it means that you're receptive to new ideas and the opinions of others, that you're not looking at an issue biased, you're not being prejudiced, you're giving fair ground to the different positions there are. But we have to be careful, even as we look at that definition, we have to understand what it is not. And what it is not is being wishy-washy. It doesn't mean that you don't have confidence in your views. It doesn't mean that your mind is so open that your brain falls out and you're not examining ideas critically. It doesn't mean that, you have to be open-minded about UFOs or things like that. It just means that you're willing to consider other views.
So Steve Wagner and I were talking about this because at one point we were actually thinking about writing an article about this, and maybe one day we will. Other things have become a higher priority, a lot of other things. So we spent some time about a year ago discussing this in some email exchanges, and I think this was one of the helpful points that Steve made as we were writing, was this idea that open-mindedness is not it's not this failure of confidence. It's not this, you can never have a firm stance on anything because you're like always basically completely questioning. You have no confidence. You're complete self-doubt about every view. That's not, but I think it's where a lot of people think it is. And so one of the things that Steve said I thought was helpful. He said, if the goal is to get more true beliefs, like that should be our goal. Where everyone gets up, even pro-choice people, I think we all get out of bed and we want to have more true beliefs by the end of the day and less false ones. So he says, if the goal is to get more true beliefs, it would make sense that the goal is also to get more confidence about our true beliefs by studying. If we've studied a topic thoroughly and come out with, say, 97% confidence, then when we hear something contrary, we can try to hear it, but it goes through the filter of lots and lots of study, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so here's, like in my mind, I want to say open-mindedness is actually like a virtuous thing. So you did some reading on that. I'll flesh that out for us. Is open-mindedness actually a virtue?
Yeah, well, when I was doing my reading, I came across this term called corrective virtues. And what that simply means is that there are natural emotions that we as humans have. One, for example, is fear. And the corrective virtue to fear, so that fear doesn't go too far, is courage. And so I found this book written by a psychologist on character virtues, and he made the statement that open-mindedness is the corrective virtue to what's known as the my-side bias. And the my-side bias is a term that means that you are, when you look at evidence, even if you're presented with equal evidence on an issue, like say the death penalty or abortion, and you have good arguments on both sides, you are more likely to just focus on the good arguments for your side and either ignore or view the other arguments as not as strong. You're not going to be as open. You're not going to be as fair with the issue. So that's what the my-side bias is. And so the psychologist was saying, well, then what we need is a corrective virtue to the my-side bias, and that is being open-minded. And it's not something that's going to come naturally to us. Just like a lot of times courage isn't something that comes naturally to us. We have to make a decision. Okay, I know I'm prone to the my-side bias, and I'm going to be proactive in being more open-minded.
So the psychologist is saying, okay, most people have this. It seems like we've got reasons for believing this is not a good thing to have this my-side bias. If we want to have more true beliefs, then this corrective virtue would be being open-minded.
And that's the question. Why is it virtuous? Well, because we want to have more true beliefs. Do we really want truth? Are we willing to pursue truth at whatever cost? And if we are, then we should want to be open-minded.
One of the things that when Steve Wagner and I were talking about doing this article together, Steve said, let's look at this quote. And there's this quote from Wolfhart Pannenberg, who's a German theologian from the early 1900s. And this is something that he wrote in Christianity in the West. He said, "We do not possess the truth in the sense of owning it or having it at our service. It is precisely our commitment to the truth that is always always beyond our secure apprehension that requires us to respect those who offer alternative accounts of the truth, both within the church as well as the outside. So what he was saying was, it's because of our commitment to truth, if we are actually committed to truth, then it's because of that commitment to truth that we naturally live with some level of self-doubt. Because we know we've been wrong before. We've said this at Jay, like, I've got wrong views. I've had wrong views before. There's no way I'm right about everything now. The thousands of views that I have now. Yeah, we should care about that. At least I think we should care about that if we are really committed to the truth. One of the things that crossed my mind as we were talking about this the other day is the question: do we really want the truth, or do we just want what's going to be comfortable for us? And I apologize for going to movies, but no, these are really good. I think in terms of movies, so the first one that came to mind was Men in Black, and I haven't seen all those movies, but the first one, you got Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones find out about, Tommy Lee Jones tells Will Smith about the secret government organization to cover up aliens. Right. And it's just so ridiculous when I talk about it. If you've seen the movie, it works.
Great movie. That's a good movie.
And so Tommy Lee Jones tells Will Smith, I don't know what their actual characters' names are, it doesn't matter. Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith.
J and K, right? Basically, whatever.
I don't know. You can just mix up. So Tommy Lee Jones tells Will Smith, okay, so we want to recruit you to come join us and work with us. But if you don't want to, you can decide no, and then we'll do the flashy thing on you, and you're not going to remember it, and you can just keep on living your life. And then Will Smith has to then really question, okay, do I want to know what is actually true, or would I be more comfortable just being ignorant about it? And he decides, no, I want to know what's really going on. And so then he takes the job, and then hilarity ensues. And the other example I was thinking of is a little bit less funny. It's from The Matrix, which is just every philosopher's favorite movie to talk about. So you have the character of Cypher. I actually know the character's name in this one. The character of Cypher, he's gotten out of the Matrix, and everything's awful and hard, and all the food is terrible, and just everything's bad. And he's like, no, I will betray all of my friends and let them all die if I can just get back into the Matrix and not have to face the reality. I would rather be ignorant. Ignorance is bliss. I think, and so we've got a contrast between those characters. In the one case, it's okay, I'm committed to the truth. The truth is what I want. But in the case of Cypher from The Matrix, it's no, he's not that interested in the truth. He's interested in what's comfortable. And I think that's something that motivates a lot of people, Christians, non-Christians, pro-lifers, pro-choicers, to not really be open-minded, because it forces them to have to face some very uncomfortable possibilities.
That's really true. And I think that alone, that desire to seek truth, should be what motivates us to be open-minded. But even that aside, there are all these other benefits that come from being more open-minded. Right. This quote comes from the book Character, Strengths, and Virtues. It says, complex thinkers are less swayed by singular events and are more resistant to suggestions and manipulation than simple thinkers. Saying that if you're open-minded, you are going to be better at critical thinking. If you are weighing ideas out, if you're making lists of pros and cons, if you have to make a major decision, you're being open-minded about your options. You're going to be less swayed by manipulation. And, who doesn't want to be less swayed by manipulation?
Hopefully that's a good thing, right?
Right, exactly, yeah. So I think the next question is that we agree that this is something that's good and it's important, but how do we become more open-minded?
Right.
So what about you, Tim? You've done a lot of reading the issue of abortion, and you talk to a lot of different people. You know more about it than most people do. How do you stay open-minded in a conversation?
I think that's a really good question. So part of it, I like to remind myself that I've been wrong about things before. But I think more than anything else, I think we should reason the way that we want other people to reason. So I'm jumping back to religion, because that's kind of an obvious place to me of where open-mindedness shuts down, because we want to think, well, no, we're just absolutely sure that our religion, Christianity or whatever it is true, and a lot of people believe that. The problem is, like, all kinds of religions believe that. Christians are sometimes, they're just 100% sure it is not possible that I'm wrong. And then a Mormon feels the same way. It's not possible that they're wrong. And a Muslim feels the same way. Right. And Lord knows a lot of atheists feel the same way. Right. And they're not all right. So there's some kind of a problem going on here. So I think the mistake is thinking that they're actually sure. They're not really sure, because some of them are wrong. They think they're sure. So I think the way that we should reason is how we want other people to reason. If I'm going to go talk to a Muslim and try to convince him that
Muhammad is not God's prophet and his name is not Allah, then I want him to be able to just listen to my arguments and take that seriously. And so if I want to be able to have that kind of conversation with him, I should also be willing to take the same perspective. If he can give me a really good argument that no, Jesus is not Lord, Allah is God, then I should take that. I should go where the truth leads me.
Mm-hmm. I had a similar experience. I'm Protestant, but I've had some more conversations about Catholicism lately, and I realized in some of my conversations and dialogue, okay, I truly want those that I'm dialoguing with to be open-minded about my thoughts and my beliefs. But that also means that I need to be open-minded. And it came home to me at a greater level. Like, okay, I can't, if I want to be persuasive to them, I have to be willing to listen to their arguments and be willing to be persuaded. And I think that comes from avoiding selective exposure. Like you've mentioned before, Tim, being in your echo chamber. You know, a lot of people will listen to the radio show that supports their political ideas. They'll watch, the TV show, the news channel that supports their political ideas, whether that's CNN or Fox. They'll read the blogs that supports their beliefs. They'll go to the same church, and they don't experience other ideas. And so what happens is that you polarize the other position, and once again, that's leading you away from seeking true belief.
I think pro-life people do this a lot. I think a lot of times. I think both sides do this a lot. But like for example, I see a lot of pro-life people. We're not paying attention to pro-choice arguments, especially if you're not talking to pro-choice people. If you're not reading pro-choice blogs, if you're not friends with pro-choice people on Facebook that are posting pro-choice links and videos and things like that, then like for example, like bodily rights arguments, people like pro-choice people will a lot of times say something like it's part of her body, which can mean at least 3 different things. And we immediately, because we've heard more pro-life people use this talking point, say, oh, but she doesn't have 4 eyes and 2 noses and 20 fingers and and all that stuff. But it's like
silliness.
But that's not what they mean.
Yeah.
Like no one thinks that when
we're not confused about whether or not
body.
Women have several heads.
Right. No pro-choice people think that, and I've done that before. I've been there. So okay, that was me, and now I'm learning more about bodily rights arguments, and I'm recognizing them more often. It's like, hey, so I wonder if that only happens when you expose yourself, when you read pro-choice blogs as much as you read pro-life blogs, or or take it into any other issue.
Yeah, and I think we need to be clear and say that, you don't have to spend all your time researching the other position. I think sometimes people of opposing beliefs will say that, maybe Christians will say that, well, how can you be an atheist? You need to read the entire Bible before you can decide whether or not to be an atheist. Someone in that situation may have enough arguments that allows them to have that belief at that particular time. And so we should always be open to doing more reading, but that doesn't mean we have to read every single argument out there. We just need to be open and familiarizing ourselves and pursuing truth.
Okay, so I think a question that I would want everyone to ask themselves listening to this is a question that I think we need to be wrestling with on a regular basis is, are you actually persuadable? And I know this freaks some people out, especially when we're talking about religion, but are you persuadable? Are you aware of possible ways that your view could be the wrong one? Okay, so I think a valuable question for everyone to really thoughtfully consider, and not just after the show's over, but on a regular basis, is this question of, are you persuadable?
I've got a couple of ideas for ways that people can try to evaluate themselves. The first one is, what happens to you when you're having a conversation, whether it's abortion or whatever it is, and someone makes an argument that you're not really sure how to respond to? Do you dig your heels in and start getting creative? Or do you say...
looking for links to post on Facebook.
Or do you say, I'm not really sure. That's an interesting question. I hadn't thought about that before. Let's talk about that. Like, help me explain that better, and I'll get back to you. If that's your response, then that sounds like that's a good sign. That sounds like you're an open-minded person. But if what you naturally do, just in your own evaluation of yourself, is no, you get stubborn, you dig your heels in, and you're like, no, I'm sticking to my guns, that's a red flag. And you should be really, really concerned about that, I think. The other thing that I think can be helpful to consider is the question, imagine someone came up to you and they gave you just a knockdown argument that just clearly demonstrated that your view is wrong. And obviously that's really hard to do. So, but just pretend for a second that they did that. Would you change your mind if someone demonstrated with 100% certainty that your view is wrong? If the answer to that question is no, then you ain't open-minded. Okay, so how do you create an environment of open-mindedness within a conversation? How do you demonstrate to the other person? I know for me, it's been saying, when I say I'm open-minded, being like, I really, really am. Like I used to think Planned Parenthood was racist. I no longer think that because I did more research and thought more about the arguments. And I'm just not persuaded anymore. So I've changed my mind about even things within the abortion debate, not to mention all the other things that like my wife has proven me wrong in the last 7 years of marriage.
You want to get to some specifics?
So no, but I really am. I really want to hear your view. It's like I'm trying to communicate. Okay, I'm not just acting this way. This is not just rhetoric to try to get you to be open-minded. I'm trying to say if this is not me, this is certainly what I'm trying to be.
I think it also comes down to asking questions again in the conversation to understand their view. If you're not even willing to take the time to understand their view and ask clarification questions, then it's pretty obvious you're not open-minded.
Great point. You only want to hear yourself talk, but you're super open-minded to their view. Yeah, probably not. Okay, this has been good. Tim Brom is on staff with Justice for All. If you want to support him, and I would encourage you to strongly consider that, go to jfaweb.org. Click on Meet the Mentors. He's right there. All the links are there. It's been a great blessing having you on the last 4 shows. I'm sure you're going to be on more times in the future. Thanks. A lot of fun. That's our show. Have a great week.
You've been watching Life Report, pro-life talk, real-world answers. Life Report is produced by Right to Life of Central California. Visit their website at fresnoprolife.org.